Wow, look at that. Look at the quality, the consistency. She's wearing the same clothes every time. Look at his facial expressions. Guys, welcome to my tutorial on how to create a children's book fully automatically with AI. I'm going to show you how to create the automated process step by step on Make. And there's actually two bits to it. There's all of this and there's all of this to do. We're going to go through every single one. But if you want the shortcut where all you have to do is click these three buttons and import the blueprint, which will load all of this for you, head over to my tutorial website, link in the description below. Sign up, head to Classroom, and you'll see that there will be a course called Children's Book AI or something similar. And underneath here, you'll see there's resources, make.com blueprint, and you just download those. And then when you open up a new scenario inside Make, so scenarios, create scenario, you click the three dots, import blueprint, and you'll get all of this ready built. There are still some things that you'll need to do, which we'll go through in this video, such as creating a data store, and you'll need to connect up your own services and change some of the variables, but all of this will be there for you. That's both this one and that one, everything you need to get started. Otherwise, we'll get going step by step and you can make it from scratch. Make.com is a no-code automation tool. There is a free plan. Once you get going, you'll probably need to sign up to a paid plan. If you're new to Make.com, head over to my membership site. There's a link below in the description. Head to my classroom here and you'll see I've got a course, Make.com for Beginners, where you can learn all about it. To get started, we need to create a Google Drive folder. So head to Google Drive and create a folder where you're going to keep all your project files for the children's book. I've called it Children's Books, under which I've got Project 1, Project 2, Project 3, Project 4. You could name these the name of your books. Inside Project 1, you'll need to follow this if you're going to use my Make.com blueprint. You want to have a subfolder called Output, and we want to create a new Google Sheet and name it Story Template. The Google Sheet looks like this. On Sheet 1, we're going to have text, image prompt, and image URL. Under text is where the AI will produce our story, such as Once Upon a Time. Under column B, we will have the AI produce an image prompt for each line of the story, for example, a castle on top of a hill. And once it's created the image, under column C, we'll have it return the URL of where it stores the image. And that will be inside this output folder. So create new folder, and name it output. In output, the AI will store the images that it will create. So you don't need to create these images now. I've left them here just to illustrate. And here are some things that we're going to get the AI to create for us in later steps. First, we're going to get it to create a character sheet where it reads the story that it's created and produces a single image with each of the characters. It will then reference that image to make sure that each of its subsequent images are consistent. Here we can see the same character there, and again, as she gets into the boat, it's the same character. Now that you've created your Google Drive folder and the spreadsheet, head to the spreadsheet again, and we need to create a second tab called Sheet 2, and you want to name that Character Descriptions. In this second sheet, the AI will return a descriptive list of all the characters in the stories and how they should look. So for example, a girl wearing a woolen hat with a red scarf, the dog called Curtis that might have black spiky hair and white spots. Now that you've got your Google Sheet sorted, we can then head over to make.com and get started with the first part of our process. Head to Scenarios, Create Scenario. We're going to create one called S1 Create Story, S for Story. We've got two parts. Our first scenario will be called S1 Create Story. I like to organize it like this just to keep things a bit more simple, and it gives you a little bit more control when you come to edit the story later. Now, if you have the blueprint, you can just click the three dots, import blueprint, and here you are. But we're going to start right from the beginning. You double click to create modules in make.com. And the first one we can see here is set multiple variables. So you just search here, set multiple variables, and that will give you this module here. And that's the way we add all these modules in this scenario. And so the first variable you'll need is called spreadsheet ID. And just for good name keeping, any second word we use a capital letter. So I've got spreadsheet, capital I, small d. And this is the ID of the Google Sheet that we created. So heading back to the Google Sheet, if you don't know how to find the ID, you just go to the URL of any Google Sheet. And it's this long bit of code after /d and before edit. So that long code there, we will put in as the spreadsheet ID variable. add a new variable called sheet name 1, and we're going to call that sheet 1, which refers to the name of the sheet here. Add a new variable called sheet name 1 ID, and that's the URL ID of this sheet, which again, if you go to the URL, the ID of every sheet is at the end where it says GID equals, and in this case it is 0. So you can see I've put 0. Equally, we're going to do it for sheet number 2. So here's sheet 2, and we can get the ID of sheet number 2 as well. This is just a good habit to get into with make.com, starting your scenarios with this set multiple variables module, and it just makes the rest of the scenario much faster to do. Now onto the fun stuff. In this example, where we're creating a children's story, I've assumed we're going to have 30 sections of the story, or let's imagine 30 pages, or let's imagine 30 lines of text. Here you can alter that depending on what you want to do. Just bear in mind that the more pages you do, for example, means the more pictures, which means the longer it will take, the more processing it will use, the higher the cost when you're creating the picture on OpenAI. Also bear in mind that if you are going to print a book, for example, via Amazon, self-publishing, there is a minimum of number of pages, which I believe is between 20 and 30. So I've set that to 30 here, and I've called that variable sections, and we'll come back to it later. Now for the really fun bit, the story. Here I've called the variable story, and this is just a brief abstract of what you want the story to be. AI will create the story for us, but you probably have an idea of what you want the story to be about. Or if you don't, you could just use ChatGPT to really create the abstract for you. Just copy and paste this as an example and ask it to make some other stories. In this case, I'm creating a story based in northern Alaska where a girl goes fishing with her mum. She ends up going overboard and has a mystical adventure and survives. And at the last thing we're going to add here is the illustration style, meaning the style of the artwork. And I've put clay animation, but you could change that to whatever you want. You could put watercolor, or you could describe a style of an illustrator that you like particularly. Just note that if you start naming illustrators, for example, Quentin Blake, you may run into problems where OpenAI won't allow you to do that prompt because of copyright concerns. So instead, one way you can do it on ChatGPT is to ask it, how would it describe the illustration style of X person? And then you can use that result in here as the variable value. So that could be as long as you want, but I've kept it simple there, clay animation. So we've set our multiple variables on to creating the story. Next, we're going to want a module called Create a Chat Completion from OpenAI. So again, we just double click. You can search OpenAI. You can do show more, and we've got various options here. In this one, I've got create a completion prompt. That's what I've done here. Now, if you're doing this for the first time, you're going to have to connect to OpenAI. So up here, you may not have this connected already, or you might need to select your connection. So if you're doing this for the first time, you click add. You will need an OpenAI account where you go to, I think it is platform.openai.com, and you will need to create an account, add billing, get an API key and an organization key, which is under settings general, and connect that all up. So this isn't free. You do need to pay, although when you compare the price to how much it would actually cost to get a custom children's book, it's incredible. Once you've connected that up, and there's lots of YouTube videos online, just search if you get stuck. Now select a method, create a chat completion. At the time of recording this video, the most relevant model to use is GPT-5 Mini, but you can try various different models. It doesn't particularly matter. They do have various costs, which are always changing. So just search and try different ones, but that's the one I'm using today. And you can see here that when you choose this module, it gives you the option to send multiple messages to OpenAI, which means you can show it an example of how you want it to respond. And that can be really useful. The first message, message number 1, we're going to give it the role of developer/system. This is a system message where we're kind of saying, hey, this is who you are. And I'll just quickly read this. You write the text for children's illustration books based on a given description. Include simple dialogue. Maximum 5 characters, meaning characters in the story. Split the story into less than or equal to the number of sections that we set in this variable over here, which was 30. Output exactly 1 section per line separated by these funny looking things here. And I'll come back and explain that. Do not introduce or conclude your answers. Do not ask follow-up questions. What this prompt is doing is it's creating the story for us, and it's splitting the story into lots of different lines. Next, we're going to add a message 2 with the role user. So we're giving it an example of how we want it to respond. And here the user has said, I want a story about a banana-eating monster who attacks a banana town and the heroics of two bananas that tackle the monster with fun ingenuity. In other words, that's an example of the story abstract we wrote here. So we're giving OpenAI an example, and we're going to show it how we want to respond. So under Assistant, I've written an example story here, or I probably got ChatGPT to do it. And what it does is it's given an example of how I want it to respond to the story. And at the end of every sentence are these three funny vertical lines, which you can find on the keyboard near the return key. These will become important in the next step. After that, we then have message 4. And now this is going to be the message that we give it. So user, and we're going to send it the story that we wrote in this variable here. I've written max completion tokens of 3048. So what that will do is it will create the story for us, and it will result in the story with the divided by those 3 lines. So let's just run that, shall we? So if I come down here, I'll copy and paste that. Run this module only. I did that by doing right click. We want 30 sections. Here's the abstract of the story. We're only running this one, and it comes up with the result. We can expand where it says output result, and you can see it's created the story, and it's put these 3 lines after every sentence. So now we have our story. What do we want to do with that story? We want to store it in a Google Sheet, this Google Sheet, and we want it to put the story here. But we want 1 line on each cell, and that's why we put that funny 3 lines at the end. So we're going to add what's called a router here. So right click, add module, search router, and then we're going to add what's called an iterator. In the iterator, in the text field where it says array, if you go to A for text, you can then find where it says split. Click split, and it will put this box here. In the first part, you want to put result, which is what OpenAI has just given you. And in the second part, we're going to put those 3 funny lines that we've been doing, which you can see that I've done already up here. So what that does is it's going to go through the story, and one by one, it's going to split it into those sentences. And then we've added a module called Google Sheets, add a row. We've connected it to our Google Sheets account. You might need to do that if it's the first time. You can change the search method to enter manually. And here we're going to put the spreadsheet ID. And then the sheet name is sheet name 1, which refers to sheet 1 here. Column range, we just need A to Z. And what this says is that in column A, here, we want it to return the first line of the story that OpenAI gave us. So in here, we're putting the value of the iterator. So the story's been created, up it comes here, it's going to get split up into sentences, and one by one, each sentence is going to come into the Google Sheet, and it will go into a new row for each sentence. So why don't we run that now and see how it looks? Okay, so you can see it starting to run through, the numbers are going up there. And if we go to our story template here, we can see it's adding all the stories here, one by one, it's adding them, and it should stop around now. There we go. And I'm just going to press stop so it doesn't continue. Hit save. Remember that make.com does not autosave, so you want to be pressing save at every step that you do. If you make a mistake and you want to go back to a previous version, you can click previous versions here and find your previous save. There is no undo. So we've done this row up here now, and we can see our story up here. And this is a good opportunity for you to review it manually and change anything that you don't like or just want to change. Next, we're going to be looking at this line, which is very important, and it enables us to have consistent characters. And the way we're going to do that is have AI read the story again, and this time describe all the characters in detail so that we can use them for image prompts. So coming out of your router now, you click this plus button and a second little thing will shoot out like this. So I'm going to restore a previous version just to show you. Here we go. And we're going to create a model response this time. So it's not the same thing as create a completion. We're going to add module, OpenAI, show more, create a model response up here. That's the easiest one to use. A little bit different than what we were doing before. Here I'm using GPT-5 Mini, text prompt. From this story, extract key characters and give a simple descriptive image visual prompt that will be used for character reference sheets for illustration purposes. Return in simple table format, name in column A, description in column B, no subtitles, introductions, or conclusions, or follow-up questions, maximum 5. Now that refers to how many characters I want in the story. I have found that if you go above 5, the images struggle to maintain consistency, like there's too many characters. And then what I'm giving it is the story again that OpenAI generated over here. So that result comes from that story that it makes. And so it's looking at the story, it's reading it, and it's plucking out all the different characters. Then we want it to update our spreadsheet with those character descriptions. So we've got update a cell rather than add a row. So it's update a cell Google Sheet. Search method, enter manually. Here's our spreadsheet ID again. This time, we're going to keep the descriptions under sheet 2 to keep things tidy, which is called character descriptions, but it's sheet 2 here. So I've got the sheet name is sheet name 2, which is a variable that we set over here, sheet 2. And we want to update cell A2, which is just underneath here. We just want to plonk all the information here. And we want it to be the value that this OpenAI module gives us here, which is the result. And if you find that as you're doing this, the result's not coming up, and note it says 18 and each one has a separate number, so you know it's this one, not that one. If you find it doesn't come up, you might just need to press save, refresh the page. Sometimes you do need to do that in order to get these sort of magic things to come up here, this button here. So if you don't find it, just keep pressing save and refresh. Once that's done, we're going to add a set variable module. We only need one variable. We're going to call this character descriptions, capital D. And again, we're going to use the same result from this OpenAI result here. So that's going to be stored because we're going to call it later. But let's run that again and let's see what happens. This is how the character description looks like. It might be ugly. Yours might look a bit different. It doesn't matter. We're just plonking it all into this cell so that we can reference it later. But also, it's a chance for you to be able to read it and change it how you like. So for example, here we can see there's a little girl and she's got a character, 7 to 8 years old, short and wiry, pale, Arctic skin. You can see the mum and you can see the description here, a rock, the captain, sea folk. So that's all referring to the characters of the story. And this is your opportunity to now change it so that when the image generator refers to these descriptions of the characters, you can edit it as you see fit. So now we've done the top row, which created the story. We've done the second row, which created the character descriptions. Now we're creating our first image, which is a character reference sheet. So this is an important image, just to give you an example of what we're talking about. Here's a character sheet where what we're doing is we're looking at the characters and we're creating them in this single image so that we can give it to the AI so that every time it makes a picture, it knows, oh, that's what that person looks like. That's what that person looks like, and that's what that person looks like. So there is consistency every single time. That's the magic to my AI process here. So in order to do that, we're going to create another one from our router. And guys, if you mess up the orders of the router, note that it goes first, then it will go second, then it will go third. But if you start to feel, oh, it's going all over the place, if you right click, you can reorder the routes here. So if you do mess it up, don't worry, don't panic. Right, next we're going to get a cell. So add a Google Sheet module called get a cell. And we're going to enter manually. Here's our spreadsheet ID variable again. Here's our sheet name too. So you're getting an idea now why I like to set those variables at the beginning so that we don't have to repeat ourselves constantly. And we are getting that cell from A2. So what this is doing is it's getting this one, all of that stuff. Then we are giving that to OpenAI again. So here we're doing a generate an image module from OpenAI. So look for the generate an image module, and you need to connect up to the model GPT image 1, which is the best. Now, word of warning. You may need to verify your organization on the OpenAI platform before you have access to GPT image 1. Just because it is showing here doesn't mean you have access. You may run into an error when you run the program for the first time, and it may say you need to verify your organization. To do that, you have to go to the link that it provides. So in the error message, it will show the link. And what it means is that in your platform.openai.com, profile, settings, general, there's a button that says verify under organization. You don't have to be a company. Here's the prompt we're going to use. Create a simple image character and object reference sheet that contains the key characters from this story. It should have a white background. Each character should be clearly distinct from each other and not layered on top of each other. Only one angle per character. Add unique name tags. Avoid odd cropping in the style of the style that we set all the way back here at the beginning, in my case, clay animation. And then now we're giving it the value of our Google Sheet here. So it's going to go through and create a character sheet for these people. So let's test it and see. The little girl should be 7 to 8 years old, short and wiry, pale Arctic skin with wet hair, a bright red knitted scarf, a wool sweater, and oilskin pants, rubber boots. So once we've done that, and you can choose the size, I go for a slightly, I don't choose auto, I go for portrait because that seems to provide a bit more space. And you can also change the number of outputs. So for example, you could put 3, which is just a quick way. Let's say if you didn't like the first character sheet, well, you could create multiple options and choose the one that you want, deleting the rest. Once it generates the image, we can't see it very easily until it uploads it. So we need to add a module called Google Drive, and then we need to be able to upload a file. So search for Google Drive, upload a file, connect it if you haven't already. And then from here, you need to navigate and find your folder that we created at the beginning. So if you remember in Google Drive, we created a folder. I created mine under Children's Books, Project 1, and we created this folder here called Output. And that's where we want these images to go. So here we've got Children's Books, Project 1, Output. I want my file to be called character sheet, and you do not need to put the extension, so you don't need to do PNG, you can just do character sheet. And we're mapping it to this file result here. Here we can see aspect ratio is portrait. We can see the little girl, her mum, one of the characters, one of the sort of rock monster fellow. Now that we've got our character sheet sorted, we can then get on with creating the image prompts for each part of the story. So first we're going to call this variable that we saved over here. So add a new module, get variable, character descriptions. That's this one that was saved here, character descriptions. You've got to make sure it's typed exactly the same with the capital D if you're following this example. So just to remind you, in this flow here, we got OpenAI to create a bit in our spreadsheet that described all of our characters. And again, this is why you might want to edit it before we move on. And we're storing that here. Now we're calling that variable down here again. So it's done that row, it's done that row, now it's doing that row. So go and get that information again. Search the story. So add a new module, Google Sheets, search rows. Search method, select from all, enter your spreadsheet ID. Sheet name, this is going back to sheet 1. Column range, A to CZ is fine. Sort order ascending is fine. Continuing on then to a new ChatGPT prompt, which is just create a model response. Again, you can choose a model. I've got GPT-5 Mini here, but I do think the older models, which are a lot faster, are absolutely fine. For example, 4.1, and you may look at the pricing and decide something else works for you. It's a text prompt. You help describe image scenes for a children's book based on the story text and character descriptions. You create a visual prompt that will be used by an image generating AI to produce an image. Do not introduce or conclude your answers. Each visual prompt should only include one moment, one scene, not multiple. Character descriptions. So here we are giving it the character descriptions. The illustration style is what we set before. So in my case, it was clay animation. And the storyline to create the visual prompt for. And that comes from the Google Sheet, column A. So what's it doing? It's going to sheet 1. It's looking up this column A, which is split line by line. And line by line, ChatGPT is given this. It's just given that. And then it's asked to create an image prompt because it also has the character descriptions here. So in the image prompt for each sentence or each page of your children's book, it creates this image prompt, which will be used by OpenAI in the next step to create the image. So going back over here, we can see that not only do we give it the storyline to create a visual prompt for, I also give it the full story for the context. So we are referencing the story, which is all the way back over here, the story here. This is the full story. So let's have a look at what it does. The last module here, we've got Google Sheets, update a cell, enter manually, spreadsheet ID, sheet name 1. And the cell we want it to go into is in column B. You can see some examples I've already done. So B, and then we want it to refer to the same row number that we're calling from this one. So we search the rows to get all the stories, and then one by one, each row will get passed to ChatGPT, and we want the result to go into the matching row. So we type B for the column, and then we select row number from the Google Sheet module here, row number. So you just click that green button, so it's B, row number. And the value is the result from the ChatGPT there. So let's have a look at what it does. I've already done it here. So it's created the image prompt, very detailed, which is great because it means you'll get nice, accurate pictures. And you can see here, it's done it one by one for each of them. Now, you can read into this and change it, which I recommend that you do, because you will see now that we have finished our process here. Hit save. Definitely keep hitting save, guys. And I like to split our processes up so that you can do all of this, which is basically everything you need to get going before we move on to the step of actually creating the pictures. This is all the preliminary work to creating the story and lovely detailed image prompts, which if you were to do this by hand for each page on ChatGPT, it would take forever. So this is completely automated. And what you can imagine now is what if you had 10 kids books, 20 kids books, 100 kids books, all done completely automatically. We are now on part 2 of our process, and this part is the fun part because we're going to start creating the pictures for our story. So you can see here now I'm on a different scenario that I've made. So scenarios, I've organized it under Children's Book Creator, create scenario, and I've titled it S2, Story 2 for create images. And I like to split my processes into different parts occasionally, and this time it's particularly useful so that it doesn't overcomplicate and we can edit the prompts before we start creating our pictures. Again, if you head to my tutorial website, link in the description, and you sign up, go to Classroom Children's Book AI, you will see you can get this blueprint as well. So we're now working on this blueprint 2 of 2, and you just click the 3 dots, import blueprint. You will still need to edit some things, for example, the variables inside here. You'll need to connect up your own services. And even if you get the blueprint, you will still need to create your own data store, which is what we're going to go through. So please do still watch this entire video. Otherwise, we'll go through it step by step and you can create it yourself from scratch. First, what we need to do is create what's called a data store. A data store is something on make.com that now allows us to hold information between running scenarios. In this case, the data store is going to hold the file ID of a picture. For example, this picture, or maybe another picture. And it's going to allow us to use previous pictures generated as contexts or as references for OpenAI to generate new pictures with. And this is the secret to creating a storybook with consistent characters and styles. We give it the previous images so it knows how to continue the story in a similar manner. So first, we're going to go to More, Data Stores. Under Data Stores, you click Add Data Store, and here you will just need to give it a data structure, which we're going to say is file ID, capital I, small d, and the data storage size in megabytes is 1. You can title it something like children's books. Let's have a look what it looks like here. We haven't created anything, so it's blank. And we have 2 columns, key and file ID. The key, when you're setting it up, can just be blank or default. But we do need a column here called file ID. Now that you've done that, we can head back to our scenarios and we're going to get started with our process now. First of all, as I like to do with many of my make.com scenarios, we're going to set some variables. So add a module, set multiple variables, add the spreadsheet ID. Again, this is the same spreadsheet that we're using here. You just get the URL and it's the code after /d and before /edit. The sheet name 1 again is sheet 1. Sheet name 1 ID is 0 in my case. It might be different for you, so please check. Sheet name 2, in my case, is sheet 2. Sheet name 2 ID, that's the ID for my sheet. It will be different for you. And lastly, this is something different, the character sheet file ID. Note the capital S, F, and I for naming conventions. This is the character sheet that we made and saved in our Google Drive from the previous step. We're talking about this one. And we want to get the file ID from Google Drive. In other words, where is it stored? And you can do that by right-clicking, and you can open in a new tab, and that will open it like this. You can again get the URL, and after /d and before /view, that's the file ID. So I'm copying that, I'm heading here, and I'm just pasting that in and pressing save. press save. Remember, make.com does not autosave. After setting multiple variables, we're then going to add a module for Google Drive, download a file, connect it up, and then enter the file ID, character sheet file ID, which if you remember is the one that we just did now. What's this doing? The Google Drive module is downloading this image. It's downloading it, and we're going to use it later. Now we're going to get to the data store. Add a module, data store, get a record. So I'll just show you that one. Data store, get a record. And what this is going to do is it's going to look up our data store that we created, that table, to see if we've saved any images there in the past. The first time you run this, there won't be any images, and that's fine. Next, we're going to add a router module, which asks following two questions: if an image exists in the data store, or if there aren't any images yet. In our case, as we haven't run it, the first time we run it, it will go down here if no images exist. If there are images, it will go up here. And we'll do this first. Click the plus button on the router if there isn't already a path coming out of it, or if there is, then add the Google Drive module, download a file. So this Google Drive module is download a file, and we're going to change it to enter manually, and the file ID comes from the data store. So if there is a file ID in the data store, we want to download it. What is this file ID in the data store? It will be the last image generated by ChatGPT. So imagine your storybook, and imagine it has 10 pages. We're now working on page 11. What we're going to do is we're going to ask ChatGPT to create the image for page 11. But not only are we going to do that, we're going to give it two things. We're going to give it our character sheet, and we're also going to give it the last picture it generated for page 10, so that when it creates the image for page 11, it's got context in which to work with. It'll make sense as we go along. So that was Google Drive, download a file. The next one we do is Google Sheets, search rows. Select from my drive, spreadsheet ID, and sheet name 1. So what we're doing is we're looking up this Google Sheet here, and we want to get all this information. Does the table contain headers? Yes. The column range, the default A to CZ is fine. We're adding a filter here. The filter is, does column A exist? Yes, there is information here. So we set that to A, exists, but we don't want it if column C exists. So put C does not exist, and make sure that is an AND condition. So we want both of these things to be true. What's column C? Column C is where we're going to put the link to the images that are generated. What we're basically saying is, hey, I want ChatGPT to create a picture if we've got information here, but if I haven't done it already. Cool. So this one will pass. If there was some text in here already, like this, that suggests that there already is an image created, and I wouldn't want it to do it again. So because there is data here, it exists, we don't want it to do it again. So that's what this is about. A to Z, yep. Sort order ascending and limit 10. Now this is very important, including if you're using the blueprint. So every time you create an image, it's going to take time, tokens, and what I have noticed is that if you leave it blank and just do the default, which would be all of it, which could be up to 30 or 40, depending on how many pages you're creating, what happens is that the make.com scenario times out. It's got a maximum of 45 minutes runtime, and sometimes that's not enough to do, let's say, 45 pictures. So by setting it to 10, it keeps it safe, and then you can just click run again and again until all the images are done, or you can schedule it, let's say every 15 minutes or every hour, every 2 hours, until it's all complete. And it will pass those just 10 rows one by one to the next step, which is OpenAI. So now we get those 10 rows, and I've got a little note here explaining to myself and for you guys if you've got the blueprint, why it's limited to 10. We then pass each row one by one, which will happen automatically, to OpenAI. And I've got a module here, and this is very important. It's not create an image, it's edit image. Let me show you that. OpenAI, and you want to scroll down or search for edit image. What you don't want is generate an image. And this is the secret sauce to making consistent story illustrations. If you use the edit image module for OpenAI, you can add images for it to reference. First, we choose the model, GPT Image 1, I've done here. Again, you will need to verify your organization on the OpenAI platform before you can choose this module via the API. Under images, we're going to add an image. So you just click add image, and we're going to add first file, which is the Google character sheet, this one. So OpenAI knows, hey, these are the characters we want to use and make. And then we're going to add a second image, which is the last image created in this process if it already exists. So we select that. If you're finding that these options don't come up for you, you may need to press save, refresh, and then it might come up. What prompt did I use? So now we're telling OpenAI how we want to make the picture. You create illustrations for a children's book. Attached is a character sheet for reference, and maybe the previous image in the story for continuity. Create an image of this scene. Now, if you remember, we have already automatically created the visual image prompts in column B. So this is the image prompt I want it to follow for this sentence here. So it's column B. So in here, I select B from the Google Sheet. Avoid odd cropping. Leave bleed space or white space around the edge. This is useful for if you are going to print your book or send it to Amazon Self-Publishing. Each image should only contain one character one time. I have noticed on occasion that OpenAI will get it wrong and it will create an image where the character is repeated doing multiple things. Sometimes for artistic purposes you might want that, but generally not. So I add that. Quality. This is important to talk about. By default, this option will be set to auto. There is a big difference between low, medium, high, and it doesn't just refer to the quality of the image in terms of resolution. It refers to the amount of thinking that the model will do whilst it creates the image, as well as the resolution. What I've noticed is that if you create an image with low quality, whilst it is faster, it'll have more inaccuracies. It won't follow the visual prompt that we created in the spreadsheet very accurately, but it will create it fast at a lower resolution. If you select medium or high, it will follow the prompt more accurately and the resolution will be better, but it takes longer and costs more money. It will take up more tokens. Underneath, you can select size, whether that's square, landscape, or portrait, and you can ignore this part where it says mask, but finally, you do have the option of how many images you want it to generate. I suggest being careful with this, especially if using high. You should allow at least a minute or two for each image to be created. Once it's generated the image, we want to save it somewhere. In this case, Google Drive. And we want to save it in our output folder that we created. So we want all the images to be here. So add a module, Google Drive, upload a file. Here, we're going to select where we want to save it, in this case, project 1 output. And each file name must be unique. This is very important. So I just give it the file name of the sentence that it's creating. So I use this sentence here as the file name. It's long, but it describes what the image is, so I don't necessarily have to open it to check which image is which, and it's just a quick way of doing it. You don't need to put the extension of the file like that afterwards. You can just put the file name, but it must be a variable that changes every single time, otherwise it will override the image or you'll get an error. And then what file are we updating? Well, it's the result from the OpenAI edit image module. Convert a file, no, and then hit save. Remember to press save as we go along. And finally, we've got two final steps here. We've got update the image URL in the Google Sheet. So once it's created the image, I want it to show me where it saved it. So put the image there. That'll also be used in our filter to stop it repeating. So what we do is we add a Google Sheet module called update a row. Enter manually, spreadsheet ID is the variable spreadsheet ID, sheet name is the variable sheet name 1, row number is the Google Sheet row number from here. The column range is A to Z, and it is in column C, that we want it to save something called a web view link. So here you can see web view link, which is returned from the Google Drive. Again, if you don't find these quick actions coming up, these quick variables, just press save, refresh the page. You might need to run a module one time, and then it should come up. Once you've done that, you can just press save. And lastly, once it's created an image for your story, we want to save the file ID for it in your data store. So we create a module under data store called add replace a record. You select which data store it is, children's books, and you type in the key file ID capital I. Overwrite an existing record. I've got that set to yes because I'm only interested in the last image created. For those of you who might be slightly more advanced, want to tinker around with it, you might want to say no and keep a list in your data store of every single file ID. And what you could potentially do is send ChatGPT more images for reference. You would have to tinker around with how to do that. And that would give it more context for even better accuracy, but it would take longer and use up more tokens and cost more money. What do we want to add to our data store? Well, we want to add the file ID from the Google Drive, which is here. Hit save. One last thing that I missed talking about that we need to do is we need to add a filter. So as it comes along here, when we start, we download our character sheet. We look up our data store. Are there any pictures? If there are, we want it to go up here. But if there are not, we want it to go down here. So we need to add a filter. And you do that by clicking the dotted lines. And you can do this anywhere on make.com between two modules. You can see the little spanner tool. So if you click the dotted lines between the router and our Google Drive module here, we can label this if the image exists. And here I'm saying if file ID in the data store, change this to exists, good, then I want it to come up here. That's how we add the filter. We now need to create the second path from our router. So click this plus button. And then the first thing we're going to add is Google Sheets search rows. And you can see it's actually exactly the same as this one. And as a little shortcut, what you can do is you can hold your shift key, click, drag and click all these modules on the top line, right click, copy, and underneath you can press paste. You can just drag them into place. They're going to be almost exactly the same with a few little changes. So starting with Google Sheets, search rows. So again, select from my drive, spreadsheet ID is a spreadsheet ID, sheet name 1, A to CZ is fine, filter A exists and C does not exist, so it's looking it up. And this is saying, hey, if we've never created an image before, well, let's create a filter. So if no images exist in the data store, which is the variable file ID, basic operator does not exist. So if no images exist, come down here. Now we're going to change an important thing here. So look, oh, no images exist. So we only want the first row. So we're going to put a limit of 1. So we only want this first row. It's the first image we're ever creating. We just want 1. So in here, very importantly, change the limit to 1. Next, we can continue almost exactly the same. We've got OpenAI edit image. The difference is this time, because no previous images exist, we only have the character sheet to give it. So we add an image and we select it for the character sheet. And a slight difference in prompt is that I don't say anything about previous images. It's just attached as a character sheet for reference. Everything else is the same. We give it the image prompt. As you can see, there's the image prompt. Next, we've got to upload the file to Google Drive. So this is the same as previously. Select where. We're using the sentence as our variable, and it's the OpenAI result. And then we're updating our spreadsheet with the web view link that is generated once it's updated, and we're adding into our data store. Okay, hit save. So let's review what is going on here. The first time we run it, it's going to download our character sheet. Then it's going to look up our data store and see, have we ever created an image before? If the answer is no, it will go down here and it will get the first row and only the first row. It will then pass that to ChatGPT or OpenAI to create an image for that first storyline using the character sheet. It'll upload the image, update our Google Sheet, and add it to our data store. Then it will stop, and that will be the first image that we've created. The next time we run it, it will come along here, download our character sheet again, it will go to our data store, and there will be a file ID because we have created an image. We created our first image here. So this time it will say, is there an image? Yes. So it will download that image that we created. Then it will go to our Google Sheets, and this time it will get the 10 next sentences to create images for, pass them one at a time to ChatGPT or OpenAI to create an image, and each image will be uploaded to Google Drive. Each image will be saved in our Google Sheet in terms of the web view link, and the last image will be updated in our data store. So we only store the ID of the last image, and it will keep running through this until they're all done. So the first 2 times you run this, the first time will create 1, then you press run again, and it will create the next batch of 10. And it might take a while, so go and make a cup of tea, and then you can press run again, it'll make the next batch, run again, it will make the next batch. And eventually, your output folder will be full of images. So let's try that now. We can see it downloading the character sheet. It looked up the record store. You can see the filter worked and it came down here. No, we don't have an image. We can see here that it got 1 result from the Google Sheet, and now it's creating the image. Okay, it's just finished. Let's go take a look. So we go to our Google Drive output folder. We can see here the first image has been created. And look at that. Look at the detail. So good. I absolutely love it. And let's just see if it matches the character sheet. You can see there she's got a red scarf, red hat. And in this one, got the red scarf, red hat. Now, something to I really want to stress is that this automation, whilst it is, I mean, it's amazing. We just did that completely automatically. I would consider this process to be for your first draft of a book. I would not think this is something that, you know, it would be of good enough quality that you could make a bestseller. I think it is should be treated as the first draft and a shortcut to creating a picture book 85% complete with some effort and tweaks thereafter. So for example, here, I would be expecting to download this image now and asking ChatGPT directly, manually, to make some tweaks. For example, or maybe I'll just make it a bit brighter. Or I've noticed now that there's a bit of an error here where the boot goes through the boat. Okay, so I would be downloading it, adding it to ChatGPT. You can highlight the area you want to fix, and you could just type something like fix the boot to not look like it's part of the boat and is inside the boat. And then ChatGPT will give you back the exact image all fixed. You can see little things, for example, here, the oar in this hand isn't quite perfect. So there are tiny tweaks that you are still going to have to do manually. But I mean, look at it. Absolutely amazing for the first go. Incredible. So now going back to the scenario, we can see we've created that first image. What's going to happen now if I press run again? So I had to press it one, it's done the first image. Now I'm going to do it run again. We're expecting it to go up here. And this time we're expecting it to do 10 pictures. Let's try. There we go. We can see it went up here. It used a filter. I'm hoping that it's got 10. I think we can see if we click this. So if we click this whilst it's working, we can see limit 10 and it's outputted 10 bundles. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 10. And importantly, we want to make sure it's not doing the first row again. And you can see here it's row number 3. So we know it's not the first row of the story, which would be row number 2. So it's creating the pictures now, and we'll come back when it's done all 10. And I will then have to run it again a second time to do the batches 10 to 20, and a third time to do 20 to 30 until it's all finished. So I'll come back when the whole thing's finished and we can have a look at the pictures. Okay, we have our images created. Let's have a look. Very exciting. Here we can see the first picture, and we can see the consistency of the characters is just awesome. It's so cool. Look at this one. Look at the detail of the wave. Absolutely incredible. She falls into the sea. There's some words at the bottom that we might want to edit out. Down she goes, meets the sea monster and continues. So you can see all the pictures here, and on Google Drive, if you sort by last modified, it will put it into the order that it was created, which should be the order of the story. And now we come to the point where it's about perfecting it. And I really want to stress that this process here really does just create the first draft of a story. There are ways to improve it. I do not think that you'll be able to just print a story and it's 100% perfect. No AI tool can do it perfectly in a single shot. But this is just incredible how much detail we can get straight away automatically. I mean, that is clay animation style. The world we live in today is mad. But there are some things to watch out for, and I'm now going to show you how you can increase the quality and get closer to that perfection the first time. There's already some things you might have noticed. So the first thing to notice or to watch out for is what I call style drift. As the AI creates more and more pictures, it may start to drift away from the original vision. And I'm going to show you an example of that here. In the first picture, I would say that's almost perfect, exactly the style that I wanted, this clay animation. Now, if I go to the bottom, what we'll probably see is it's drifted away from that style quite a lot. Actually, that's pretty good. It's clay animation. You can see the monster's eyes has changed from blue from yellow. Let's have a look at another one near towards the bottom. There. So you can see it's more this cartoon style. That's not clay animation at all. Halfway, slightly in between, going more towards the clay as we go back to the beginning. Bit of cartoon, clayish, cartoonish. And so what happens is it tends to drift away from the original vision if you produce too many at once. There's a couple of ways we can solve that. First is to concentrate a lot more on your character sheet and to make sure it's exactly the style you wanted it. At the beginning, I didn't spend much time on my character sheet. In fact, we just got it to generate it and didn't pay much attention at all. And you can see here that actually in the character sheet, although I've asked for clay animation, it's not. It's actually more like just illustration. And if the character sheet is wrong, and you can see here it's got blue eyes, even though somewhere else in the story it's supposed to have yellow eyes. If this initial character sheet is wrong, all the pictures may be wrong thereafter. So it pays to spend more time on the character sheet. For example, here I'm redoing the character sheet, making sure that each picture, and I'm just doing this in Canva, really is in the style of clay animation. And I can update the character sheet manually by just saving this into Google Drive and naming it character sheet, getting the file ID and updating my variable here with the new character sheet. So really spend some time creating a good character sheet that you are happy with. The second thing to pay closer attention to are the visual prompts. For this demo video, I didn't really look at the visual prompts for speed. But before you start creating the pictures, you really should read them. And what you want to pay attention to is, has the AI described the colors of all of the clothing and accessories of each character every single time? So for example, in our character sheet here, it should describe what they're wearing. So for example, from a wool pom-pom hat, but it hasn't actually said what color. So why don't we improve that by saying from a red wool pom-pom hat? A thick teal parka, good. So now that it's done that and you improve it, you want to just make sure that every image prompt does specify the colors of things. And if it doesn't, then improve it. So if we try and look for that hat, is it going to come up? A wool pom-pom hat. So I'm going to say a red wool pom-pom hat. And that is because if you pay attention to the pictures here, good, same color, good, same color. The jacket's changed color there. Good, correct. It is pretty good, but there are some details that are changing. So it's good just to improve the styling references to always make sure everything stays exactly right. So what we'll do, I will now go through my image prompts in detail, improve them, and then I'll run the process again. The other thing I suggest doing is not doing big batches. So for example, instead of 10, you might change it to 5 or even less. Maybe you'll change it to 2. And instead of just creating one image at a time, maybe you would change it to say create 3. So you've got 3 different options. Okay, so there are various ways you can play around with it to improve the consistency of the pictures. Let's take a look at what we got. Starting here, you can see the picture. I love this picture. I think this one's my favorite. You can see the consistency of the characters, but look at the water and the quality of the detail there. She falls under the water. That's the character sheet. Clothes are more or less always the same. Look at the quality of this one. I absolutely love this one. There he is there. You might notice we might need to fix something. Here he's small, there he's big, but we'll just regenerate that. The consistency of the characters is fantastic. It continues. Now we're in the third arc of the story. Look at that. That's so cool. And that's the end. Guys, absolutely amazing. We've never managed to get results like this. Such consistency across the characters. For the first draft of a children's book, I think that's incredible. If you want the AI to redo an image, so for example, this one's fine, this one's in a cartoon style that I don't like, then all you have to do is find it here in Google Drive, note the name of it, they laughed softly casting a net. And we're going to delete it. Go back to your Google Sheet here, find it in the Google Sheet, they laughed softly, and you just remove that link. Because when you come to run it again, yes, images exist, it will look up, because of this filter that we added, whether column C does not exist. So now that you've removed it from column C, it will say, okay, I need to create the picture for that one again. So when you come to run it again, it will do it for any that you've removed. But one thing you need to consider before doing that is about the file ID stored in your data store. Now, if you remember, in your data store, it updates with the last image created. Well, if you are now redoing an image halfway through your story, this file ID might refer to, for example, the last picture here at the bottom. That might be the last image it was generated. So it might not be the best reference point. Instead, what you might want to do is you might want to add an older file ID that it can reference. So for example, let's say I want it to reference this one, that's fine. To get the file ID, you can just copy the part which is after /d and before /view. So I'm copying that, going to my data store, opening it up by clicking browse, pasting it there, and then hitting save. Now that I've done that, it will use that file ID when it comes to look at it for the reference. So now I'm going to press run and it will regenerate that image for me. And when it saves, depending on how you have this sorted, I usually put it as last modified. So it will put any new images at the bottom here. So how do we actually take all of our images and make them into a book? Well, we can use a free plan on Canva, for example, where you just create a document, upload your images, and then you can just drag and drop them into Canva, resize them as you like, and you can put things like the text at the bottom or in speech bubbles, or you can put them in specific frames. And what you can do is you can actually even print it with Canva, and there's lots of options there, or you can just export the whole thing and use various other softwares or whatever you want to make it up into a book. If you want the blueprints and shortcuts to get the processes yourself and get up and running as fast as possible, head to my tutorial community. I'll put a link in the description below. Sign up, then you head to Classroom, and then you can see there will be a bit here called Children's Book AI, and I'll have the whole plan here, including the blueprints. And guys, as I myself tinker with this, I will be updating things like the prompts as I learn more, and I will put that into here. So if you get this, you'll have the latest prompts which increase the quality. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more.